We are on a roll. 2 episodes in 2 weeks of the Dallas Stars Fanatic Podcast, as we are now 2 weeks into the season. So I like those numbers. Welcoming in Ryan Lochead. This is Garrett Jones. Good to be with you, Ryan, today. 3-3-1 start for the Stars. How have the first couple weeks of the season treated you?
It's relatively underwhelming a bit. Those 3 wins coming in, some tight overtime games and a couple other games that we probably should have won there, including last night. So while 3-3-1 isn't dead, it's certainly not something that I'm super pumped about.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought up last night too. And by the way, we're recording this on Thursday, the 28th. So this is off of the worst loss of the season thus far, a overtime loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. And I don't know about you, Ryan. I have a lot worse taste in my mouth about this season after that loss, because going into that game, I was pretty pleased. I think one of the big things that the fans especially are happy about was that the Stars have started out 3-0-0 in overtime. I think that is just such a welcome change to last year. But last night was just such a terrible swing back in the other direction that I think a lot of Stars fans are a bit more malaised after that 3-2 loss in overtime last night.
Yeah, certainly. I'd agree with that. And I think it was our first game back since all the COVID stuff where we had a full healthy number one rosters, and we put up the shots. We just couldn't finish.
Yeah,
in those spots and in the spots where we had those kind of high percentage attempts. Sagan had a look, Hintz had a look right in front, and their goalie played on his head all game long, including that final save that I'm sure had you gasping for.
Yeah. Yeah, Burso. I'd never seen him play before. He's obviously getting a lot more playing time with Vegas trading Marc-Andre Fleury to the Blackhawks. And then Robin Lehner expected to miss some extended time there among their multitude of injuries. But, we'll get into last night's. We'll go through game by game so far and just kind of give general observations. But, so we'll get back to that game in a moment. But, yeah, that was a game that, man, you just look at that and you had to have that game, right? Vegas is majorly depleted. I mean, they're missing Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, Nolan Patrick. Obviously, we mentioned Lehner, and it goes way beyond that. So, I mean, they were limping after a loss playing the night before, and I'm really disappointed the Stars let that one go.
Agreed, especially considering that Vegas flew in same day. And,
right.
You really want those kind of wins. But.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one that I think we weren't disappointed in, and one that a lot of Stars fans were pretty happy with, was the opening night win. That was at New York, 3-2 in overtime. The Stars looked like the team that we expected them to be, got out to a 2-0 lead, ultimately led New York back into the game, and then Miro Heiskanen did Miro Heiskanen things with a beautiful overtime winner. Mm-hmm. And like we said, just got back to it a minute ago, with how much the team struggled in overtime last year, that was so refreshing to see them win game 1 in overtime.
Yeah, especially after being up 2-0 and then kind of letting them back in the fight a little bit. Usually when that happens, you might go in overtime a little disappointed and deflated, but thanks to our clear best player, Miro Heiskanen, we were able to pull that one off. So that was good to see for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely get into Miro a little later for sure. But then the Stars took the road. They fell to Boston. Not much to say about that game. 3-1. They were in it late. That's the second game of the regular season, second of the road trip. Not putting a whole lot of stock into that one. That should be a playoff team. The one that kind of grinds my gears, for some reason, I don't know if you noticed this, the Stars have not won a game in Ottawa since 2016. For some reason, the Senators just have the Stars number when they play there, and they did this past Sunday when the Stars lost 3-2. I hate playing there.
I think a lot of people hate playing there just because that city's kind of meh. But well, that's an argument for another time. But yeah, you want to win games against teams like Ottawa, who are nowhere near kind of the type of level that you would expect the Stars to be playing at. So that was definitely an ugly one. 3 straight goals unanswered, and then Pavelski adds one late, but it was a little too late at that point.
Yeah, and that was in the middle of the Cowboys-Patriots game too. So I think that a lot of people, I think maybe the Stars realized that the lack of attention, or they didn't have all the eyes in the Dallas sports fandom. So maybe they kind of let down there. But yeah, I swear every time they go to Ottawa, it's always on a lethargic Sunday afternoon game or something like that. It's just I'm not looking forward to the trip to Ottawa next year. I hope that somehow that gets late in the season when they've already clinched or something like that. Like I hope that that's the case that we're talking about this time next year instead of the Stars losing the game, because I do not like them playing the Senators on the road. But Tuesday's game, the 19th, that was one of the best wins of the season so far. I put that up there with the New York win for sure. They beat Pittsburgh in a shootout. Pittsburgh was off to a great start. They beat Tampa Bay on opening night. And then the Penguins gave the Stars a great effort there on November 19th. But Dallas wins in a shootout thanks to Radulov.
Yeah, thanks to Rads and thanks to Braden Holtby kind of, doing what we brought him here to do, and that's hold down the net when we need him most. He had a great save percentage that game, 27 of 28. It's hard to criticize that at all, and you never hear me. Well, the thing I'll criticize is the fact that we only scored the one goal for him. So that's a trend that I think we've seen throughout the season so far. And probably the last couple seasons as well. So all my notes just say, why can't we score goals? Why can't we score goals? Why can't we score goals?
No, that's been a significant problem. Fortunately, on Friday it wasn't. The Stars won 3-2 in a shootout. Gurianov with the overtime winner. Sorry, it was an overtime, not a shootout. That was on ESPN Plus. It was on ESPN Plus, so it debuted there in a national audience for the Stars. Pretty cool. What do you think about the NHL on ESPN so far?
I like it. I like the entire kind of switch up that we've seen from the NHL broadcasting stuff, from the games on TNT to games on ESPN. Despite the fact that I also loved NBC Sports, it's nice to see some new faces out there and kind of get new looks. Even though one thing I've noticed, and I'm not sure it's ESPN, might be TNT, but they put a bald on ice commentator that they probably just copy and pasted like Pierre Maguire somehow. So he stands in between. I'm like, you didn't have to go full copy mode on that.
That's funny.
A little bit.
That's funny. Yeah, and they have hired a lot of a similar talent as well. So is TNT. So that's been interesting to see the way that the NHL's new media deal has worked out. But yeah, the Stars got on that stage and they made the most of it, winning at home in the home opener. I think that was a great way to start the home slate. And then things kind of mellowed out the past two games. I didn't really watch the Columbus game on Monday. I did see the viral clip of Rick Bowness calling a timeout to chew his team out when they gave Columbus a lot of high scoring chances. And then, this is a family friendly podcast, so I will not repeat what Rick Bowness said, but it basically, just to put it as gently as possible, he told his team to F off on the bench. So that was one of the funnier moments, and a lot of NHL fans picked up on that in the Columbus game. Yeah, that one was pretty ugly. I understand why Bones was a little upset with that one.
Not sure if you're a Succession fan on HBO, but he was doing his best Logan Roy.
Yes, definitely. He absolutely was. That one was kind of a stinker. And then last night, really just kind of everything came to a head. The Stars dominated that game through the first 40 minutes. Really, they've struggled in the second period a lot this year, and then they played their best second period of the year. They take a lead. Radulov picks up a goal from Hakanpää, and then the Stars go ahead and take the lead with a second goal, 2-1 there. Then they get really sloppy in the final minute. Anton Khudobin, who had a great game, in literally the final 60 seconds of the game, plays a puck poorly behind the boards. Heiskanen's in a terrible spot. He has to get it out quickly, and they work it across the blue line. And then it's a game-tying goal for Jonathan Marchessault. And the Stars did get a chance in the final seconds, but we went to overtime, and very quickly, just a terrible play in front of the net. As Mike Heike, who's the longtime Stars beat writer, put it, the Stars played with their food around the net, and Vegas cashed in on a terrible turnover, and Evgeny Dadonov scored late for the overtime win. I'm curious, just your thoughts overall on that game.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Played with the food in front of the net. You never want to do that because it leads to those sloppy turnovers, and ultimately it cost us. That was just, you're watching that game, you've seen the scoring opportunities, and the entire time I just kept saying to myself, man, we should have finished. Man, we got to put the puck in the net there. And it was the theme of the entire game. Even the first goal was a bit of a fluky one. And you never want to really survive on those. So that had me worried throughout. And, with that last minute, giving up that goal is just one of those things where they go back in the locker room, you sit there and you just you're deflated after that. You work so hard, you put so many pucks on the net, you grind all game, and for it to come to fruition like that, and then have to go out and pick yourself up for overtime it's a tough thing to do. And it obviously didn't work out for us, but optimistically speaking, the shots were there. Miro looks incredible despite the one little flub he had.
Yeah.
he's clearly the best player on the team. He leads us in all statistical categories from a point getting perspective. And while that's awesome, it's also a little telling to where our glaring holes are in this team.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think Daryl Ray put it best on the Stars broadcast last night when he said when Miro came up and made a play along the Vegas blue line, and Ray said Miro is not just the best offensive player on the ice right now; he's just the best player on the ice. Period. When you look at that Columbus game, you look at the Vegas game, he was no doubt the top performer there for sure. So I like that observation for two. He leads the Stars, as you mentioned, in points, 2 goals, 5 assists. He's tied for the team lead in goals. Tyler Sagan has 2 goals. Michael Raffel's been a nice surprise. He has 2 goals as well. So there's Luke Glendening. So those free agent signings looking really good. Joe Pavelski and Radulov each with a goal, and then Gurionov obviously with the overtime winner. That's his lone goal this season. Individually, what else stands out to you about the Stars this year?
Individually, well, I'll tap back to the goalie thing. Holtby, I really like him back there. He gives me like a warm, funny feeling inside. Just seeing him come out. I've seen him some videos where he's interacting with fans, and it seems like he's enjoying playing here and sees an opportunity for himself to kind of take over this lead role. And I think, despite being 3-3-1, none of that is really on him, because there hasn't been a game where the goaltending has been the issue. It all just goes back to scoring, because goalies need support, and you're only as good defensively as your goal scorers allow you to be. So hopefully he can continue to be playing at the level he's playing at, and everybody else can kind of catch up, and including our 2 big names. I haven't seen much from Jamie Benn this year. I don't know your thoughts on him.
Right. Yeah, Jamie Benn has not scored a goal. He's got 2 assists for 2 points. Like many of the Stars, he's at a negative plus-minus right now. Kind of the team's playing at that because they can't score. Joe Pavelski's actually at a plus. So is Gurionov at a +2. So that's something to keep an eye on if you look at the analytics for sure. But going back to the goalies, yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan. They have not been the issue at all. Braden Holtby is 2-2 with a 2.04 goals against average. Hudobin is at 1-1 in the games that he started with the 2.68. So you split the difference there. It's about 2.3. You can absolutely win with those kind of numbers. But again, I think for Stars fans who are hopeful that, okay, maybe the team is moving away from winning 3-2 games, or maybe they're moving away from the model of they have to win 2-1, right? We're not really seeing that through the first 7 games of the year.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like we're rolling directly, out of where we were kind of last year, where we had a little bit of injury excuse, and we could kind of point and say, when this guy's back, this will happen, and when this guy's back, that'll happen. And now that these guys are back, I know we're only 7 games in, so it's like total overreaction pod here. But when the goals aren't coming, and you look at teams who are putting up massive numbers, like the St. Louis Blues at 5-0 with a ton of goals scored, it's hard not to shake your head a little bit and be like, what are we going to do here? What's the move?
Right.
Because we obviously can't be sending out the same kind of thing at night in and night out.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. Speaking of returns, Blake Como and Jason Robertson actually both made their season debuts last night. So that is something that will be encouraging. Como's a bottom 6 guy, obviously gives you a lot of grit and grind on those 3rd and 4th lines. So he's somebody to watch for sure. But Jason Robertson, big things expected. He's already a little behind the 8 ball starting this season late. So, his numbers might not be exactly where Stars fans want it to be this year, but still you feel good getting him back just 6 games in.
Yeah, definitely. He missed some time with the shoulder. And luckily I don't think he had to have any like crazy surgeries around it. So it should be an injury that he gets stronger without much setback. So you got to expect him to start kind of building on what he created last year.
Yep. Yeah, we talked a lot about Miro. We haven't talked as much about your guy, Tyler Sagan, and really a Stars fans guy for sure. He's had a nice statistical start to the year, 2 goals and assists for 3 points, but a -4, plus minus, a couple penalty minutes and a power play goal. What have you seen in his return from injury?
The same kind of thing that I talk about with Robertson, where when you're coming back from injury, you might get off to, it might take you a little bit to grease the wheels. And Sagan was gone for a really long time. There's a great piece on The Athletic right now of that rehab process from Sad Youssef. If you check that out, it's well worth the read. But yeah, Tyler, he looks like he's motivated out there. He looks like he's getting back into form, and I know the numbers aren't there from a plus minus standpoint, but he scored a couple goals. He helped out on another one, and his hands look as quick as they ever have. We'd be having a completely different conversation right now if that I forget the goalie's name, but if he hadn't stretched across the crease and robbed us. That was all Tyler Sagan there in front. That turn to put it right back in front of the net. That's some vintage stuff, flashes of greatness that I hope he kind of builds up his confidence and doing what we know he can do.
Right, and we just did not see that at all last year when the Stars would get down late in games or in overtime. They didn't have that push. So I think on the positive side, for sure, you look at the fact that, okay, they did have a high danger chance there in the final 60 seconds after giving up that backbreaking game-tying goal. So, yeah, definitely some positives to build on as well. I think overall, personally, I'll give way to you in a moment for your descriptor of how you would describe the season. But I think when you look at the record, you look at just the way that things are kind of broken out. I think the best way to describe the first 7 games are pretty neutral, right? You've won some good games. You've taken some setback and had some tough performances, and then you lose that one in overtime last night. I feel pretty neutral about the team through 7 games for sure.
Yeah, I like that, neutral. When you prefaced that question, the first thought that went in my head was a work in progress. So I think neutral. It's a neutral work in progress where we're kind of getting our footing. Hopefully, the guys who didn't play much last year or have missed some time this year are going to start kind of feeling the flow as we really get into the meat of the season, because we are only 7 games in. So a lot of what we say may be a little bit reactionary, but at the same time, that's what we're in the business of. And when the results aren't there on the screen, we want to know why.
Right. Exactly. Well put. Speaking of getting into the meat of the season, let's take a look over the calendar for the next couple weeks. Friday night, they get Ottawa at home, 7:30 puck drop at the AAC. I want to see them just beat the heck out of the Senators, really. I'm tired of them losing to the Senators on the road. They have been much better against them at home, to give them some credit. But, yeah, I just want to see them take care of a bad team at home for sure. Then it's a road trip on Tuesday the 2nd at Winnipeg. That starts November. At Calgary on November 4th at 8 p.m. That's a late game. Another even later game on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock at Vancouver. And then they head back home for a 3-game homestand starting November 10th with Nashville, Philadelphia on the 13th, and then Detroit on the 16th, getting close to Thanksgiving. What about that upcoming road trip and homestand stands out to you?
All these teams are probably teams that we can compete against and win games. And when you're 3-3-1, you want to come back from a road trip, not down. So I think Jamie had said that 500 on road trips is kind of a place you want to be. Anything below is obviously not acceptable, and obviously you want to win. So like you said, it's a neutral. We're in a neutral setting right now, and hopefully this road trip can put us into high gear here and we'll start buzzing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think in addition to that, you look at beside the Senators, who the Stars have already played this year, and then beside the Predators and the Red Wings, who are in the Stars division, they're seeing every single one of those teams. So Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, and Philadelphia, they're seeing all of those teams for the first time since the 2019-20 season. Wow. Really hard to believe. It's been over almost 2 calendar years since they played the Flyers. You could say the same thing about the Flames. I think they played the Jets and the Canucks before the year was called in March. I think they played them in 2020. But still, it's been forever since we've seen a Stars-Jets game. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Looking forward to see the pregame warm-up duel between Mark Scheifele and Tyler Sagan, per usual. That'll be good to play those division rivals again. And then Vancouver is, again, you feel pretty confident about winning on the road for sure.
Yeah, and that Jets team doesn't have Patrick Laine anymore, I believe. So he was.
Thank goodness, man.
He was an infamous Stars crusher, so we won't have to endure that.
Well, and the Stars saw him a lot more than usual last year when he was in the division in Columbus. So thank goodness they have moved to only seeing him twice a year. Watch him get traded to the Blues or the Blackhawks or something within the division. That would be terrible. But I actually think he'd be a really good fit in St. Louis. But yeah, no, well, let's just cross our fingers that nothing like that happens for sure. But yeah, it's certainly something interesting to keep an eye on as the schedule progresses. Again, that was through games on November 16th. So definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. Speaking of which, just taking a look around the league, looking at some general storylines, obviously in the division, you mentioned St. Louis off to a super hot start, 5-0-0. They're one of 4 teams without a regulation loss yet. Florida pacing the league at 7-0-0. Carolina is at 5-0-0, and then Washington's had a much better than expected start at 4-0-3. Yeah, obviously you get points out of every single one of those games, so they've taken points from everyone. Any other teams that are standing out to you that maybe I missed there?
You know, you're talking in our conference here. You know, those Buffalo Sabres are kind of a surprise right now at 4-1.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, the Capitals getting points in every game is impressive. Ovi seems to be back to his goal-scoring ways, which he never really left. So how can you be back from something he never left? He looks like he's on pace to kind of challenge that Gretzky record, but we'll see about all of that. Jumping over the Western Conference, the Blues and the Wild, and those Wild are pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of good teams right now, but it's early, and hopefully we can get out of neutral.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think elsewhere in the West is kind of interesting. Obviously, the Stars did their part to help them get out of it, but Vegas starting out 2-4-0 has been interesting. Same thing with Colorado, who beat Vegas head-to-head. So that's something to monitor for sure. Have you seen a Seattle Kraken game yet?
I have not, no.
Yeah. I got a chance to watch a couple. I watched their opening night against Vancouver, and then or Vegas, I should say, and then I watched the tail end of their home opener. It's pretty interesting. The Stars don't play them for several months to start the season, but yeah, definitely interesting to see an expansion team in the league for sure.
Yeah,
I think on the East. Go ahead.
Just looking at their kind of win-loss briefly, a quick scroll, it seems like they're either scoring a ton of goals or they're having a ton of goals scored up against.
That's basically it. That's
a true boomer bust type situation over there.
Yeah. So those Stars, fun fact, were the first victim against the expansion Vegas Golden Knights on opening night in 2017. The Stars were their first win in franchise history. So I think Stars fans enjoyed seeing the Predators suffer that similar fate at one of their division foes' expense when Seattle beat them for their first franchise win at the Bridgestone Center a couple weeks ago. Just a funny little NHL trivia nugget there. Moving forward, yeah. But one thing before we wrap it up here, I did want to get your thoughts on, obviously the NHL rocked by the Blackhawks sexual assault scandal. In case you don't know, general manager Stan Bowman is out in Chicago, resigning after the league released a wake of allegations and findings in a multiple 100-page report. And there was a player named Kyle Beach who actually reported a non-consensual sexual encounter from a former Blackhawks video coach, Brad Aldridge, in case you don't know. Basically what happened was Bowman, Joel Quenneville, Kevin Sheldayoff, and a lot of the Blackhawks brass decided, let's not deal with this while we're making a run for the Stanley Cup. This happened in about May of 2010, if you're not aware. That's essentially what happened that the league uncovered was Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman basically ignoring more or less the allegations of Kyle Beach and several other Blackhawks employees, including an NHL intern. That's a lot of the weeds. That's basically a summary in case any of our audience hadn't heard what came on. Just a total mess. Just a nightmare scenario. I mean, every single thing about it is just awful. What are your thoughts on that situation overall and how it was handled by the NHL?
Well, it just seems to be another case of like people in power doing the wrong thing when they should do the right thing and opting to cover up instead of attack these things head on. And it seems as though these things are coming to light more and more each day. And I think that's great. The fact that Coach Quenneville coached in the NHL last night was shameful.
Not great.
I know he met with the commissioner today. Hopefully that's the end of his thing, because they've kind of handled it wrong, obviously, in the moment. And then when it's all come to light, they're continuing to say and do the wrong things, denying that they had no idea, all sorts of rubbish that just doesn't check out. Jonathan Taves, a captain who I thought was one of the good ones, came out with the most tone-deaf, insensitive quote about who even knows where his head was at. So just all the way down the line, they've done the wrong thing, and I hope that the buck comes back to kick them right in the face here, because it's shameful.
And obviously you never want anybody to deal with a situation of sexual assault, or even worse, covering it up. But I'm sure Stars fans aren't shedding any tears over it happening to the Blackhawks, right? I think that if anything, Stars fans are feeling kind of vindicated here that it's happening to the Blackhawks. And I mean, they really, man, they are just at rock bottom. I think this is the absolute lowest you can get as a sports franchise because it's kind of getting overlooked in all this, but they have not won a game.
Yeah.
They're 0-5-2. Just a total nightmare start. And Stan Bowman is now gone after signing that Albatross Seth Jones contract, after trading for Marc-Andre Fleury, after buying low, after them showing some kind of glimmer of hope right during that COVID season. They are just in a horrible spot.
Yeah, and you just feel like it's some universal karma or something coming back on him and saying, this isn't how this works. You got to answer the calls from all these skeletons you've been burying in the closet.
Right.
And for the player, how do you say his last name? Beach? Is it
Kyle Beach? Yep.
Kyle Beach. It was pretty brave of him to go on TSN and just put it all on the table after a decade of harboring that emotion. So I hope he gets some sort of compensation to make it feel a little better, but I'm sure that's something that's going to stick with him for a lifetime. It was cool to see a lot of the talking head Twitter people come out in support of him, and a lot of the players come out in support of him. So these kind of things have a way of working themselves out, especially now that all the meat is on the table. So we'll see how the commissioner responds to this, but you gotta think that he's got to go scorched earth, or he's going to have people knocking at his door saying, why can you suspend so quickly for this in the past and you can't make a decision here?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would be really surprised if Joe Quenneville keeps on coaching for Florida, because now the thing that the Blackhawks are getting a lot of crap for, right, is the attitude that he said, oh, let's deal with this later because we're winning now, right? And that would literally be the same situation if Florida says, oh, we're 7-0-0, we need to keep our coach on the bench. Well, I mean, that's literally repeating the past mistake that you're getting flamed for right now. So that's going to be really interesting to see the way they respond. Kevin Cheveldayoff, I mentioned as part of that group. He is the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets currently, so his seat is very hot. He likely is on his way out too. This is going to have some massive repercussions on the league. And like we said, just the Blackhawks are at the rockiest bottom right now for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They both as a hockey team and as just an overall culture, because the more you dig into like what they were doing back then, and I've seen some pictures come out that people are like analyzing like crazy, and it seemed like they had this whole kind of toxic culture that was fine because they were winning, but winning doesn't last, and these kind of things will scar a reputation forever.
Right, no doubt about it. Well, that'll about wrap it up for this episode. It's basically been decided by me with the lawn care starting outside. I don't have much of a say in it, but definitely some good stuff here. Looking forward to seeing what the Stars have to have coming up in the upcoming homestand and road trip for sure. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode about the Stars so far?
Final thoughts are Stars got to start scoring more goals, and hopefully we're gonna see some content come out of these home games coming up as the schedule's clearing up and we can get out to some games and start taking some pictures. So be on the lookout for those.
Well said. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Lockdown21. Also, we didn't have it set up at the time of last recording, but we do have it now. Follow our account on Twitter at Stars Fanatic Pod on Twitter. We tweet some game updates, retweet some team news, stuff like that. So be sure to interact with us there. I didn't do it for this episode, but I will for future episodes. We'll be live streaming future episodes from there for sure. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. But until then, we'll see you next time on the Dallas Stars Fanatic Podcast.